This stranger came into the pub, and there was a young lad serving behind the bar, a country pub now, but there was a young lad serving behind the bar, probably a son of the owner. But the man went up to the counter anyway, and he said to the young lad, he says, you might give me 3 pints of Guinness. So the young lad said, certainly. And he says, you might bring them down to that table down at the window there, he says. I would sit down there. So he paid for the 3 pints, and when they were filled anyway, the young lad brought them down and he placed them on the table. And there was no sign of anyone joining this man at all. Or he was expecting 2 others like to come in. And no, there was no sign of anyone coming in. But he watched the man anyway, and he'd take a sip out of his own pint. He'd leave it down, and after a few minutes, he'd take a sip out of the other pint. And after a while, he took a sip out of the third pint. And that continued until he drank the 3 pints. And he got to his feet, and he waved up at the barman, and he went out and left. But the young lad anyway was telling the boss what happened and all the rest of it. And the boss said, he says, I never seen anyone doing that. So a couple of months passed anyway, and the same man come in again. And up to the counter, and he ordered 3 pints. And he says, I'll sit down there at that table. You may bring them down to me. So they were landed at the table anyway. But the young lad slipped in anyway, and he told the boss, he says, that fella's after coming in again now. And it's the same thing, he's after ordering the 3 pints. And he's drinking from the 3 of them. But the boss came out anyway, and he pretended he was wiping tables and one thing and another. And he went down as far as your man and put chat on him. And he says, sure, Lord, he says, it's no trouble at all to us. He says, you could have ordered a pint, he says, and not be letting them go flat. He says, we could fill a fresh pint for you whenever you're ready. Ah, no, he says, it's not that at all. He says, do you see, this is my pint here, he says, and I have 2 brothers, he says, in America. And I was in America myself, he says. And for birthdays or things like that, he says, we used to go out, the 3 of us, he says, and have a pint. And now he says, that's Jimmy's pint there, he says, and that's Paul's pint there, and my own pint. And when I was living in America, he says, I told them that I'd have a drink on them, the same as we always did at birthdays and one thing and another. So that's why he says, I do drink the 3, the same as if they were sitting there. So that was all right, the explanation he made. But a couple of months passed, and he came in, and he went up to the counter, and he ordered 2 pints. And the boss that was serving this day anyway, and he was filling the 2 pints anyway, and he says, the boss says to him, if you don't mind, he says, me saying it to you, he says, I hope, he says, that none of your brothers is sick or deceased, he says. You normally used to order 3 pints, he says, and I hope there's nothing wrong. Oh, no, he says, there's nothing wrong, they're fine, he says. But he says, them 2 pints, he says, is for Jim and Paul, he says, and I'm doing the lint myself, he says.